pandemic got us into a reflective space and made us look inward to see what we can do for the world at large. As a self-expression coach, I became a catalyst for women and started Vani, a one-on-one coaching program for women on finding their voice, to speak up, to be visible. As a storyteller, I spotted there were many ordinary people amongst us leading extraordinary lives, making a difference to the world, and they needed to be heard. Thus was born You and I with Rashmi Shetty, where amazing personal journeys with their uniqueness and individuality are showcased. A reaffirmation of the fact, open your eyes wider, the world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. Our guest today is Papa CJ, a world-renowned stand-up comedian, executive coach, and published author. He holds an MBA degree from the University of Oxford. As an executive coach, he has worked with 50-plus blue-chip companies across the globe. He has been invited to speak at the Harvard Business School and written for the Harvard Business Review. He has worked across cultures in over 25 countries. His experience and expertise exist at an intersection of creativity, communication, humor, business, leadership development, and human interaction. His life's mission is to uplift others and help them be the best version of themselves. He has won awards for being Asia's and India's best stand-up comedian and performed over 2,000 shows on stages that include full houses on Broadway in New York and the Sydney Opera House. His autobiography, titled Naked, was launched at the Jaipur Literature Festival. He undertakes philanthropic initiatives through his Happiness Project, which includes performing for terminally ill patients in their hospital rooms. Listen in as Papa CJ dissects his entire process of scripting for each show of his, goes on to explain what exactly is the Happiness Project. There are some moments when in life you just sit back, you scroll, and YouTube throws a video at you. You watch the person and you wish someday you would meet them. A prayer you send to the universe at that point, a wish, not even sure whether it's going to come true, but they do. The universe listens even to those small prayers, those small wishes. So take care what you wish for. But today I'm a happy, happy person because that wish has turned into a reality. A dream come true. Papa CJ, welcome to You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Loved your video. Then went on scrolling, and to find you here in this space is amazing.
It's wonderful to be here with you, Rashmi. Unfortunately, nothing like this has ever happened for me. I see some videos and I wish that those dreams would come true. But but let's just say those aren't necessarily dry dreams. So I'm starting off very naughty already. So.
Yes. But that's your signature, so I'm not going to be surprised at all. And I'm very curious now, what was little CJ like to be Papa CJ that the world knows today?
Nothing special, to be honest. In fact, I remember when I was writing my book, this is one of the things that my editor and I disagreed upon. So when I was writing about my childhood or college or things like that, I remember her saying, CJ, what's so special about this? Everybody's been through it. And what I told her was, well, that's exactly what is special about it, because people will connect to the human being or the little boy who's telling those stories. And I think it's one of those things I've always felt. I don't believe that there is a Papa CJ or, that's just a brand. It's just a job that I happen to do. But I think the beauty of humanity is that we can connect with each other at a human level. And the magic is not in what makes us different, but in what makes us the same. You know, we all go through the same emotions. I mean, my book, for example, or even it's based on a show that I used to do called Naked. And it uses the vehicle of my life, but it talks about the human experience. So when you're reading the book or when you're watching that show, at some point you're not thinking that I'm talking about my life. You think that I'm talking about your life because you can connect with the emotions. And I think it is that shared humanity that makes it special. So with regard to what little CJ was like, uh, not unlike probably your upbringing. You know, I grew up in a middle class family. We had the same trials and tribulations, uh, and it was pretty much the same as everybody around me. Yet it was special. So yeah, I don't know if there's a great story to it, but I was incredibly grateful for the childhood that I had because it was a childhood that was filled with love. I was fortunate in that part. I've always had a family till today that's always been supportive and loving, and I think that's what matters the most to me.
True, very true. And how are you as a student? Because now I know everyone has to be super careful while talking to you because a small slip up can be made a big one. You're such an amazing listener. So, how are you as a student?
As a student, so here's the thing: and I'm using the phrase I was a very good student. In that I didn't work very hard, but I was naturally quite intelligent at the time. So, and I was also a naughty kid, but because I had always finished my work, I used to get away with all the mischief. I remember when I got into class 10, there was an English teacher who put me in the corner of the class. He literally put me on one seat in one corner of the back. And he said, you finish your work in 15 minutes and then you get all the other duffers into trouble. That was his word, duffers. Uh, but I think the challenge was, schooling for us was, I went to a boarding school for 9 years, absolutely loved it. But I think children in today's day and age are far more fortunate when it comes to schooling. In our time, we didn't have a system that catered to children of differential ability. You know, in our time, it wasn't cool to be good at academics. It was about sports. It was about being this all-round development, which you don't realize when you go for college admissions because then they just want to look at one sheet of paper. So I think one of the things I've missed over the years is the experiential learning that children are exposed to nowadays. It's wonderful. I mean, frankly speaking, I've somewhere still at the back of my mind think, if I could go back to college again, maybe I would. Uh, I don't know if I'm obviously willing to invest those many years, but just to be exposed to that form of learning. But schooling itself, I loved school. I was in a boarding school. I was good at academics without putting much effort. I was super fit, so with above average hand-eye coordination. So as a result, I was on every sort of school sports team. I acted in school plays, things like that. So I was a really good kid. I think the decline started in in class 11, uh, and also class 12. I didn't study for my board exams, and then college admissions was a struggle. So I think those few years were a little bit difficult. Yeah. So the short answer is I was a good student in school, but I also believe that I've been a huge bundle of unutilized or potentially wasted potential because either I didn't tap into it or the opportunities didn't present itself, or maybe I just wasn't willing to put in the work. But that's fine. I don't look back with regret, but I think it's wonderful to get to an age now where you have a sense of self-awareness, which allows you to understand how you work, what your personality is, and to then maybe make up for lost time and get those opportunities in to learn and grow now, which you maybe didn't have the chance to do earlier.
That's true. That's true. And I never thought I'm going to get such a serious answer from you for that question, any which way.
Okay, so if comedy is what you want, let me know.
No. The whole idea is to see the other side of Papa CJ. We don't meet very often. And were you somebody who was always seen as an entertainer while you were growing up as well? Or was it a streak you found out when you moved on after school?
Um, I don't know if I was an entertainer. I think I've, and this is a theme that's been there all my life. I can fit in anywhere, but I don't think I've ever felt that I belong anywhere, you know, because I was in a boarding school, then I used to go back to Calcutta, which is where my family was. I've never been part of groups or cliques. And ironically, the first place that I felt that I belonged anywhere was in the comedy circuit in the UK. You know, I was part of a community of other people who didn't belong anywhere, you know. So it was this band of misfits who had decided to get on stages in front of strangers and talk about their lives. But as regards being an entertainer, I don't know if I would necessarily call myself an entertainer at a young age. I enjoyed doing theater and school plays. I was never a public speaker. I was never a debater. So I could never really speak intelligent things or sense. But if you wanted me to have fun, I could do that. But I think comedy came to me very late in life. You know, I finished an MBA degree at Oxford University. I worked in a consulting firm in London for 4 years, and I took a sabbatical. And in that sabbatical, I went to Scotland to the Edinburgh Festival, and I saw somebody doing comedy for the first time. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. You know, there was a guy with a microphone in one hand, a beer in the other, and just having fun. And that was his job. So I think that's when it first struck me that you can, well, I say make a living, but seemingly make a living, uh, just having fun. So that's when I gave it a go.
Because today it is an area of specialization of work and they're celebrities in their own. But one common streak I found in all of them is that all stand up artists are amazing observers of life. They have a very wise take on life, it's pure common sense. You see it all around you and you miss it, but they pick it up and give it to you in a thread so beautifully tied together that there are some artists you really enjoy listening to. So there is a lot of study that goes in, which many of us, when we laugh, we don't realize. There's so much of hard work that goes into scripting.
I think, you know, what happens is over the course of time, you become, Rashmi, you become very, a very astute observer of just the tiny things, like the nuances of things, of human behavior. And as comedians, we say the things that other people feel but don't openly admit to, or don't openly say. I mean, I was running a session for the Economic Times about 2 weeks ago. We had about 50 CEOs in the room. Some of them had come with their spouses. And I was running this session called A Comedian's Guide to Communication Strategy. And one of the bits about in that session is about intent, about communicating your intent. And this one lady had come with her husband. And, you know, when I got them to do an activity, I was chatting with her and she says, you know, I'm not sure if some of these bits are relevant to me. I said, ma'am, allow me to help you make the link as to how it is relevant to you. I said, you know, before we walked into this session, your husband was going to grab a drink from the bar and come in. He had already had 2 drinks. You were first standing 6 feet away from him. Then you went and put your arm on his shoulder. Now, what you were trying to communicate to him was, darling, I don't want, basically what you wanted to tell him was, I don't want you to have another drink, right? But maybe what you were not being able to get across was your intent. I'm worried about you having a drink and driving. You have a health issue. I'm concerned about your health. Maybe you should have some food first. We can get home and have, you know. And she was, Rashmi, she was in shock. Just the fact that a random stranger had seen her put this gentle touch on her husband's shoulder and been able to observe all these things, which she said was spot on. But she was actually scared and shocked, saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe anybody actually observes this stuff." And of course, she was into the workshop post that. But we just noticed all these small things. And then our job is to take that and spin that into stories and present it to an audience where they're like, "Oh, yeah, I also think like this," kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's just a muscle that gets trained. As a comedian, you look at the same things as other people do, but your brain is tuned to looking out for inconsistencies or asking questions, saying, "Why do we do this?" Everybody has accepted this as normal, but in actual fact, it's really strange.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, because this is something I always wanted to ask a comedian, because where does your script come from? From life. That I know that, but
Yeah.
what helps you build that nuance of observation? What actually do you do to yourself to train yourself to look at those small things most of us take for granted or don't even realize is happening?
A couple of things. So, firstly, uh, you're not always switched on. Okay, it's
Hmm.
exhausting if you're always switched on.
Yeah.
Some people ask me, this happens to a lot of comics actually, when they're watching other comedians. A lot of comics, when they watch another comedian, are not watching it like an audience member would and enjoying it. They're analyzing, they're breaking it down, they're seeing how they structure, they're seeing joke construction, etc. I just watch as an audience, you know. But there are times when I'm switched on. Now, with regard to how we pull together gags, so I mean, it's a journey of evolution.
Hmm.
When we start, we get 5 minutes. A new comic tends to get 5 minutes. Now, you don't have the luxury of telling a 3 minute story in a 5 minute set, because then you leave with 1.5 laughs and you're not going to get hired back again. So, when I started, I used to aim for at least 20 punchlines, at least 20 laughs. You remove every single extra word that is not required. I remember I had a sequence about a beggar that was 90 seconds long. It had 13 punchlines, so there was a laugh every 6 seconds. I used to have a spreadsheet with material, how many seconds long the joke was, how many laughs there were in, whether it was a good joke or a not good joke. So there was green, yellow, and red. And that's based on audience response. You've done this before, recorded it, heard it back, seen what works well. So you start strong, you end strong. In between, the strong stuff carries the weak. So it kind of goes like that, and then you end on a high. So when I started out, it was as scientific as that, But also the caveat to that is I started my comedy career in London, in the UK. My first 700 shows were there. Now, I hadn't grown up there. I wasn't following their politics. I wasn't interested in their sports. Didn't have the same cultural references. So I was telling jokes. But when I came to India, I mean, today I can get on stage for 45 minutes, entertain an audience without telling one single pre-written joke, because I'm just chatting with the audience and making stuff up on the spot. So I think in the end, it comes down to an individual comedian's personal style, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it depends again also on the show. So if I'm doing a regular stand-up set in a comedy club, I'm just doing jokes. Right? So for me, in fact, I challenge myself to tell as few pre-written jokes as possible, because then I'm under pressure to make stuff up on the spot. And for the audience, it's exciting because they can see it's being made up on the spot. Of course, I've got the jokes in the bag if I need to pull them out. But with a show like Naked that I used to do, or my next show, which is Unbroken, there is a story that I'm there to tell. I'm telling them about a certain thing that happened in my life, and I'm taking them through this journey. I have to force myself to try and hold back on my natural tendency to get caught away chatting with an audience member. So even when I go there, I've got to sort of bring it back and then come back to the story.
Yeah.
So there isn't a fixed answer to it. I think different comedians have their own styles, but yes, we tend to have a sharper than normal sort of radar when it comes to observing things. And I have a terrible memory, so I literally write it down immediately on my phone, and then I'll sit one day and write a bunch of jokes. Go to an open mic night, a small club, and try it out, see what works.
Okay. Because I read somewhere that sense of humor is your ability to laugh at yourself. But then we know sense of humor is different in different cultures. So how do you pick your joke such that do you go back into that kitty, look for jokes which go with that culture? Because, okay, in India, even in India, there are certain spaces where people are very open to take anything, especially the younger crowd. But then the older crowd, you have to be a little careful. Or do you see that when it comes to humor, people come in with an open mind to be mocked at, made fun of, and ready for it? Because for some people, it's a huge ego issue, right?
Okay, you asked me three questions. Now, just as a background, Rashmi, when I start talking, I get caught away in thought and I ramble on. So if I
Gotcha.
forget the question, bring me back. You've
Yeah.
asked me three questions. One is about culture,
Yeah.
two about India and environment, and three is about age group.
Yeah.
Let me answer the age group one first because that's easier. I love older audiences, right? It is a myth that they don't laugh at stuff as much. Older audiences are filthy, and they have also seen far more of life. So
Yes.
the canvas you have to play with is a lot more. So no, there is no age bias when it comes to comedy. Two, when it comes to you said there are certain places they laugh, there are certain places they don't. So this is what happens at a corporate show, for example, right? I go to this show, every single corporate show, the brief I get is this is what our brand is, these are our values, can you keep it clean? When you get there on the day, people have two drinks and say, yeah, thoda non-veg, give me a slightly dirty show. But if anything goes wrong, they'll blame the comedian, saying, oh, looks vulgar, right? So what do? I get on stage. So I did a show for many years ago for TCS, pretty conservative company. They had invited 300 CIOs. I got on stage and I said, listen, I'm here on behalf of TCS. They understand their brand, but I understand human behavior. If you can appreciate the fact that the Papa CJ brand is completely separate to the TCS brand, I can give you a slightly naughtier show. Give me a chair if you want a clean show, complete silence. Give me a chair if you want a naughty show, everybody cheers. I look at the senior most client member, TCS. I said, sir, what do you suggest we do? He said, you give the audience what they want. Brand is safe. I can do what I want. I'm keeping my audience happy. Sometimes I also joke that we're the largest democracy on the planet. We can also be the largest hypocrisy on the planet. Everybody loves those jokes. They just don't want to be seen to be laughing at them. So I turn all the lights off, give them two drinks each, tell them nobody's looking at you, everybody's looking at me. Everybody has a good time. Because it's the same people who come to the comedy clubs and laugh at those jokes. In fact, any place where people have, I remember Chandigarh Golf Club, I did a show, oh God, 2008, maybe 14 years ago. And we had these committee members sitting in front, and at some point, one guy put his hand up and he says, your jokes are dirty, So I said, okay, sir, I take your point. I can do a much cleaner show if you like. And then I asked the audience, would you like a clean show? Raise your hands. And two hands went up. I said, would you like a naughty show? 400 people cheered. So then I said, sir, what do you suggest we do? He said, no, you do whatever it is. The same guy came to me afterwards, drunk out of his mind, told me how much he loved exactly the joke that he complained about, and went on to tell me jokes filthier than I would ever say on stage. Right? So, and this is one of the things I coach in my sessions as well. Often what your customer or client tells you they want is not what they really want. Right? So you've got to understand the real needs. Now, coming back to your first question, different cultures. So when it comes to material, there is some stuff that is universal material that will work anywhere in the world. Relationships, etc. But when I go to a new country, I will read up about their history, their politics. I will ask the promoter to keep the last 10 days worth of newspapers. I will find out about recent scandals. I will talk to local comics. I will talk to the promoter. I will talk to the taxi driver. I will get their opinion on what's going on and how people feel. My first 10 minutes is purely about them. Then I've got them. And then I can take them beyond their borders. So I do a lot of research when I do corporate shows. I recently did a corporate show for a client and I did 45 minutes purely about them. I spent 8 hours talking to people across continents to find out about their company, their culture, the people, the challenges. They were blown away. I knew more about their organization than they did, But it was phenomenal because it was customized around them. So I think as comics, we learn about cultures in order to adapt. Sometimes you adapt on the spot. You tell a joke, it's not working. You tell another one, it's not working. You're like, okay, maybe this stuff doesn't work. Let me try something else. But there are some other cases where an audience is maybe being uptight. So I'll crack a joke, somebody won't laugh, and I'll tell them, listen, I've done 2,000 shows in 25 countries. So if you're not laughing, you have failed. I know this stuff is good.
So, what does a artist need? Because I really think this is art. What does an artist need? Does he need to be super confident of what he's bringing to the table? Because even if the audience doesn't laugh, you have to be able to handle yourself. Does he have to be someone who's able to laugh at himself before he makes the crowd laugh at whatever he's speaking about and the others? Because everyone who sits in the audience is scared now who is going to be picked up, because they know the entire crowd is going to laugh at them. Because I remember seeing one of your shows where you took this student's mobile phone, and oh my god, that kid was so scared. All I could see him say was no, 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 no.
So here's the thing, Rashmi. I mean, I'm happy to tease people. I'm happy to embarrass them, but I'm never going to be hurtful. And there's a difference.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you see guys starting out who think that comedy means getting on stage and abusing people. I would never do that. You know, I have a lot of respect for my audience. I will tease them, embarrass them, but I'm never going to be hurtful. The other thing is, with regard to what a performer or an artist should bring to the table, I think really it's just one thing, and that is authenticity. You know, we are privileged to be in a profession where there are no rules, no boundaries, no guidelines, no social norms. It's a process of evolution for us as well. When we start out, we want to go for the easy joke. We want the confidence that people will like us. Then, because you're in a profession where there are no rules, you want to be seen as edgy, as cool. You'll use bad language. You'll pick on positions of authority. But eventually, and this is the first line in my book, and I think it applies to art forms beyond comedy as well, I believe that stand-up comedy is an outward expression of an inward journey. So the journey is inward, and eventually you just find your truth. You're like, these are my values. This is what I think is funny. This is what I want to talk about. If it works for you, fine. If it doesn't work for you, also fine. Right? And your audience will find you. So I think the most important thing you can bring to an audience is authenticity. The other thing is, I don't think you need to try and make yourself fit a box. You don't have to be a comedian or a singer or a whatever. You're there, right? And when I did my show Naked, I still remember the first time I was trying it out. There were 20 minutes in that show that were deadly serious. I was putting in poetry. I was reading a diary. There were people crying in the audience. And I remember a friend of mine coming to me afterwards and saying, CJ, what are you doing? You know, you're a comedian. How can you put this intense stuff? And I'm glad I said I disagreed with him, because in that show, it is the intense stuff that makes that show special or powerful. So I don't think you should allow yourself to be put in a box. Just be authentically you, and whatever that may encompass. I mean, one of the most popular comedians in our country today, very talented, is a young man called Zakir Khan. And I remember the two of us, I was doing a show in Hyderabad, must be 7-8 years ago. I don't remember. And I invited him. He happened to be in town as well. I said, you come chat with me. And we were talking about authenticity. And I remember telling him, I would love to see the day when he told me as a kid he used to play the sitar. I said, I would love to see the day when you take that sitar onto stage, because all of that is all you, you know. And of course, now he's quite possibly the biggest comedian in our country, fills up stadiums. So yeah, I think the only thing you really should be taking to your audience is authenticity.
Oh my God. So this is for any art form, authenticity. And I think for any human connect, the more authentic you are, the more you just blend with anyone that you see. And that's what you spoke about right at the beginning, about human beings and life itself and the blending of it all. So I'm very curious now, since you were so clear about all of it, learning in the process and doing so well, is there any show where You went fully prepped up and knew you can handle it, but the audience completely blew you off and you did a very bad show.
Oh
Or is
yeah,
there
of
a show?
course.
There is?
Of course, of course. So in fact, for us guys, as comedians, you learn nothing from a good show, right? You walk off stage thinking I'm the king. In a bad show, you get feedback every 15 seconds. If they're not laughing every 15 seconds, you're failing. And there's nothing worse than trying to make people laugh and getting 5 minutes of silence. You want to dig a hole there and bury yourself. But that's when you got to ask yourself on the way home, if I'm ever again in the same country in front of a similar audience, what can I do differently? One of the worst shows I had was in Bombay, and many years ago. And I still remember it was at the Turf Club, and there were about 800 people. There were Now, normally for comedy, you require intimacy. You want the audience close, you can make eye contact. They had come for an awards ceremony. So, see, music can run in the background. But for comedy, people have to shut up and listen. In a comedy club, they've come with the intention to listen. These guys hadn't. The closest table was 50 feet away from the stage, huge stage. And there were 200 people sitting there, completely sober, really senior industry guys. Behind them was 600 people, drunk out of their skulls, must have had 4 drinks already by then. I mean, oh my God, that show was a nightmare, and I didn't have the experience at that time to know. You see, sometimes what happens is your client is sensible enough to realize, listen, this is a waste of time. It's never going to work in this context. Uh, so, hey, buddy, why don't you just cut your set short and get off stage? And because I was still reasonably new then, I was committed to do a certain amount of time. So I just stood there and said my lines in front of an audience that couldn't give a crap. But yeah, those are not very pleasant experiences. But it's okay. We all have them.
Yes. And looking back, when you have a show like this, what has been your biggest learning? To accept your audience or to accept yourself?
Sometimes you just turn around. Do I need to keep my language clean? How clean does my language need to be?
No, that's okay.
I'll keep it clean. Uh, Sometimes you realize, you know what? Some audiences are just fill in the blanks, and it's just another day on the job. It's fine. You don't have to deeply introspect about it. Sure, you introspect about uh, whether there's something you could have done better, or if in the same situation the next time what you could do. But there are some gigs that are just no-win gigs, so you just take your punches and carry on.
Okay. I now want to know about the Happiness Project. That when I first read about it, I didn't even know about it. When I read about it, that you posted on LinkedIn and those pictures of those happy smiles and faces,
Yeah.
it was amazing to see what you were doing with those little children. So, where
Yeah.
was it born? How did you think of it? And
I used to support a charity in India that worked with underprivileged kids pretty much from when I started doing stand up in 2004. And I remember when I used to do shows, I wasn't getting paid for those shows. This was in the UK, I used to hold a small A4 sheet of paper afterwards and saying that if you enjoyed my work, you can donate towards this charity. And then I ended up having a few fundraiser nights with some very good comedians at the Comedy Store in London. This one here, which I'm wearing the T-shirt of. And then I think where the Happiness Project came from. Firstly, it's not some kind of a fixed thing that I do. It's just the banner under which I take on initiatives which I think will bring joy to people who need it more than others. So one year I decided to do fundraising shows. Over 2 weeks, I did 7 gigs in 6 cities. We raised 45 lakhs for 10 different charities. And what I would do is I would partner with 2 charities on each of the shows. One was a larger charity that had the ability to organize the show and the resources, and the other half of the money would go to a smaller charity that didn't have the means to do that. So the funds never came to me. It went sort of directly to them. So that was one. Then one year I decided to just have coffee conversations with people who needed somebody to talk to. we may have a lot of social media going on, but I find that people are lonely, and it helps to sometimes speak to a stranger because you don't want to sort of put the burdens of your pain on those closest to you. So I was just meeting random people in different cities and having conversations with them
But
while I
how
travel.
just put it on social media? I'm available for a talk. How do you choose who you're speaking?
Yeah, so I put it on social media saying this is what the email address is. Happy to have these conversations. The deal is that it will be in a time and location of my choosing in your city. I'll let you know, and I'll respond to you only if I can make it, because you get sort of more queries than you
Yeah.
can do. So yeah, through social media.
Okay.
Then I started going into hospitals and homes of people who had been unwell for a long time, just to entertain them and their families. And I did cancer wards. Uh, I went to people's homes. I worked with terminally ill patients. One of the toughest gigs I did, I remember it. I mean, I was exhausted for 2 days. Somebody invited me to the home of a lady who had lost a 21-year-old boy, a son. And oh my God, it was so the whole family was there. And I was there for maybe 45 minutes, but I still remember it took the life and soul out of the amount of energy I had to put into it to try and bring some laughter there. It was exhausting. Uh, and then more recently, I went to a children's, a pediatric hospital in Noida, where I worked with kids from a cancer ward. And initially, uh, I was worried about being able to do that show, and I was told the kids would be aged between sort of 5 to 14 years. When I got there, most of them were much younger than that. Now I'm not experienced when it comes to working with kids, but we did fine. We did 90 minutes together. We danced, we sang, we did laughter yoga. And the greatest joy, I think, the kids, of course, had a wonderful time, but for their parents and carers and loved ones, to see children who are suffering so much laugh and joke and have fun after such a long time, I think that was really rewarding. So yeah, it's not a fixed project that happens all the time, but whenever I get the time, and if there are initiatives that I can do that can bring people joy, I like to be able to do that.
And are these designed by you, or is it a team that designs it and tells you that okay, these are the options? What?
This is the team.
Okay. Okay.
This is the team.
But then, how do you decide where to go and do it?
Oh, I think, to be honest, some of it is probably just convenience, you know, because the challenge is there are so many people in need
Yeah.
in so many different places.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just a case of where you are. Two, it's a case of somebody you really trust who recommends somebody that's doing good work, you know. And I prefer working with sort of smaller outfits that uh, don't have massive offices and funds and things like that. So there isn't a formula to it, or somebody writes to you and you kind of connect with their story. Uh, so yeah, there isn't a fixed thing. But the other thing that's really challenging is, and I don't understand why people say this. You'll do something for one initiative, and they're like, "Oh, but why aren't you doing it for that?" I'm like, "Hello, like, what are you doing? Why don't you do something for that?" No, they won't think about that. So I think it's a little bit like that story of that kid walking on the beach with his father, and he's taking these fish and he's throwing them into the sea. And his father says, "You can't save all the fish." He says, "Yeah, but I can save these ones."
Yeah.
So I think it's a case of whatever you find within your
Yeah. Yeah.
vicinity.
No, because just the joy on the faces of those little kids
Yeah.
when you had shared it on, I think, LinkedIn and on Instagram, it was beautiful. Just that smile was so pure and
Yeah.
so amazing. So, when you do these, what is one thing that you are grateful for at those times?
I'm grateful for the opportunity to just be there. I'm grateful that I'm able to be able to bring them joy, because a lot of the times, I mean, I accept these things because I really want to do them, but I'm nervous as hell before I go there. Adults, no problem. I know how to work with adults, but when I'm working with kids, I don't have that experience. So in fact, this time around, when I was doing the one with the children in the cancer ward, I considered getting support for a second. You know, I could have called a friend who was a magician, called somebody who works with kids, but I was like, no, this time I want to do it on my own, you know, to give myself the confidence that I can handle it. And so I did. And yeah, it went really well. If I was to do it again, would I have the confidence? Maybe a little bit more than the last time, but I'd still be nervous, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it yeah,
No, because I've been a storyteller with children, and
yeah,
such a joy working with kids because
yeah,
they're so real in a world that is full of people who are wearing so many masks that after a point they've even forgotten how many they're putting on.
yeah,
Here is a world where there is no mask at all. And I
yeah,
think that is where the purity of intent plays a bigger role.
yeah.
So
But
beautiful.
what I also did before this was I reached out to people who work with kids and said, "This is what I'm going to do. What can I do?" So somebody shared a story that I could use.
Yeah,
Somebody said something else, you know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm always, in fact, I read this quote by Adam Grant the other day, and I'm going to write a post about it today. There's a quote by John Burroughs, and the quote is, "Leap, and the net will appear." So I'm quite happy to take that leap. But while I'm in the air, I'm talking to people who are far more experienced than me. I'm trying to learn and, you know, absorb and take in stuff from 10 different people who've done things to try and create my own way of doing things depending on what resonates, so that I have the ability to complete the task that I have taken on, which I may have felt unprepared for when I took it on.
Oh, this is so powerful because I believe that all you need to do is have the courage to leap. Because this entire podcast journey that I set on, the title is You and I with Rashmi Shetty, where U stands for uniqueness and I for individuality, which each of us carry, but
Yeah,
still we blend. And it was looking for stories of people who have tried something to find something beyond what the world thought they're fit enough for and make a difference to the world around them. So when I set out on the journey, I knew like three people. And I didn't even know whether it's going to be a weekly
but
audio podcast or anything.
you know, the interesting thing about what you said is that often people don't realize that it is their uniqueness and individuality that is their superpower, you know.
Yeah.
So if so the recent example I spoke of, Zakir Khan, right? Now if he was trying to fit himself into a box and just do comedy the way everybody else does, he's just another comedian,
Yeah.
right? But he'll do shairi, he'll play the sitar, he'll tell stories, he'll tell jokes.
Yeah.
So I think, and that's something nobody else can do.
Yeah.
Today, if I'm coaching, I bring the comedy into the coaching. I bring the coaching, and you know, it's that blend of, think of it as multiple Venn diagrams,
Yes.
and that little section where they all overlap
Yeah.
based on all your past and your experiences.
Yeah.
That's the unique you.
Yes.
And I think we should all try and embrace that.
Yes, yes. And the beauty of these conversations for me, because I call these human library podcasts, is that where at the end of it, in the midst of it all, that uniqueness is what comes out in each conversation. So it's a
Yeah,
huge learning for me in the last 76 episodes that have gone
yeah.
on a weekly basis. While I set out, I had no
Yeah.
clue. So the net definitely is there.
In fact, I should add. You mentioned human library. I don't know if you've heard of this. I recently found out about it. There's a wonderful cafe, or the concept of a human library,
Yeah,
where when you go to have a coffee, instead of borrowing a book, you can borrow a person,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
So they will have people, I forget which country it's in. You
Denmark,
can
I think. Yeah,
Denmark. So you
yeah,
can borrow
yeah,
a person who will sit and have a conversation with you
yeah,
while you have your coffee.
yeah,
But it tends to be a person from a slightly different background. So somebody from a different race or LGBTQI. So you can get a sense of an understanding of their backgrounds and where they come from. So sorry, I just thought of that because you mentioned the human
No,
library.
that is the reason why this journey began also. It is like both of us are having coffee, but sharing our journey, and kept it audio because it makes it easy to be working elsewhere and still listening to the journey, while video forces you to watch both of them. So
You
I
mean this is going to be audio? I washed my face for nothing?
no, 7 minutes of this will be on video, while the rest is going to be purely audio.
All right.
And the beauty of this podcast is it was born in the pandemic when positive stories needed to go out. People who've gone beyond themselves needed to be sharing their stories. And now is that reflection time. All of us went into a pause. All of us had our own learnings, little takeaways from the pandemic. We lost some people who were really dear, maybe not directly connected, but then there were huge learnings. So, what has your learning in the pandemic been?
I think the biggest one, it's something I've had before as well, but it was reinforced 100 times in the pandemic. Is just gratitude. We have so much to be grateful for. And when you see the immense amount of suffering that people have to go through, it is so silly. It feels so silly and petty to complain about absolutely anything because we sit in positions of such great privilege compared to what others have to go through. So I'm grateful every day.
Wow. And 3 life lessons, Papa CJ, that you'd like to leave us with.
3 life lessons. The first one, financial independence is the only independence, or the most important one. It is fashionable now to say, oh, follow your passion. Passion does not put food on the table. So, yes, I know you want to feed your soul, you need to feed your stomach as well. And until you're living under somebody else's roof, you can't necessarily make your own rules. So, number one, financial independence. Number two, please declare war on the word should. There are too many people telling us, oh, you should be like this. This is how you should live. You should get married by so and so time. You should not do this. There is no such thing as should, right? Carve your own path based on whatever works for you. And the third one is the final one, I would say, is this: is live a life of compassion. It doesn't matter how famous you are, it doesn't matter how talented you are. If you're not kind to people or good to people, nobody wants to be around you. We've got a short time on this planet. Let's be good to one another. I think that's. I've always believed this saying that I read in a Buddhist monastery. It said that your behavior is your only introduction. So yeah, just try and be just kind to the people who you come in contact to in your lives. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's the person serving you at a restaurant or a close family member. In fact, when I interview people, the last question I ask everyone, and for some of them it really throws them because they've never thought about it, is how would you like to be remembered? So let me ask you that question, Rashmi. How would you like to be remembered?
How would I like to be remembered? I would like to be remembered as a very nice human being. And how would you like to be remembered, Papa CJ?
I have a 3-word answer to that question, which is with a smile. If when people think about you, it brings a smile to their face, then your job on planet Earth is done.
Wow. Okay. So, any signature trademark line that you end your shows with or your talks with?
Yes, I used to do this across the UK when I started my first 700 shows. I used to say, don't mess with us Indians. I always try to represent India in a positive light. I was the only Indian comedian in all of the UK. And at that time, I toured 25 countries. So I used to say, you can't afford to mess with us Indians because we come from the land of the Kama Sutra. We can fuck you in more ways than you can't.
Let's
So,
leave
yeah.
it on that note. And thank you so very much for being on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Such a pleasure, honor, and somewhere for me, a dream that I never dreamt, but a prayer that the universe heard. So thank you
You,
so much for being on this show.
you are too kind, Rashmi, and your energy is just wonderful. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. With that, we come to the end of this weekly quest of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know people who make the world beautiful. Write in to rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thhirdeye@gmail.com. Come, let's explore this amazing world together, both you and I.